Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have a story about the invention of germ theory.
Hi, I'm Chris, and I have the story of a stock boy who became a reluctant billionaire.
Hi, I'm Charlie, and I'll tell you about the Popsicle King of Oakland.
What does all this have to do with the word fresh? Find out in this episode of History Bluffs. Welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. And now I want to welcome to the show, it's your host, it's Carlo!
Hey everyone, we're coming to you live straight from the internet with America's favorite midweek history-themed game show. How you doing? I'm Carlos Rivera, I'm your host tonight. Thank you for joining us here at History Bluffs. Let me break it down for you if you've never seen the show before. 3 armchair historians, count them, 1, 2, and 3. Will be given a single topic. That topic you heard is fresh. They will tell you a story from history about that topic, a hastily put together story, because they're only armchair historians. They're not actual historians. No degrees here. I don't even know if they have bachelor degrees. Maybe at best associated degrees. At best, probably in theater, not in history. 2 of them will be telling you a factual story, mostly factual, maybe with a little, you know, a little extra exaggeration peppered in, but it's mostly a little garnish of exaggeration just to make it fun. But for the most part, it'll be factual. But one of them will be bluffing to you, so mostly fiction with a little bit of truth garnished in, just to make it taste real. Okay, and you will be trying to figure out which one of these are the historians that are telling you a actual story, and which one of these are the titular history bluff. And how you will guess, you will comment during the show. But we will say this: if you know who's telling the truth for sure, if you know who's the bluff for sure, don't spoil it for everybody else. But if you don't know and you're genuinely trying to guess, feel free to type in your guess in the form of comments, and we will possibly put some of them, the live ones, we'll put up right here. Okay, so let's meet the historians that we have tonight, starting with Melissa. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Melissa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Wonderful. Where are you coming from?
I'm from Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida, the big O town that gave us the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and maybe 98 Degrees, so we don't like Orlando at all, actually. Melissa, speaking of things that have nothing to do with Orlando, I recall that Abraham Lincoln was not only a president and a senator and a lawyer, but he was also a wrestler, and a darn good one. He won about 300 matches over a 12-year career. So I ask you, Melissa, if you were Abraham Lincoln's wrestling agent back in the day, what would you recommend to him as far as a good wrestler name, or a good catchphrase, or a good signature move?
Yeah, I think a good catchphrase or signature move would be 4 sore and 7 tears ago.
Wow.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to follow that.
Brilliant. You missed your calling. You should not be in armchair history. Chris.
Yes,
Chris, where are you coming to us from today?
I am sitting in Orlando, Florida as well.
What a coincidence. Are you in the next room for Melissa? Who knows?
No, I am
our
not.
Business. You didn't have to answer, but we believe you. Chris, how's the weather in Orlando? I forgot to ask Melissa.
Not good.
It's all right. It was raining most of the day. It's raining now, but you know, that's okay.
I don't know what that is because I'm in Chicago. Chris, Abraham Lincoln,
Yes.
the wrestler. We already have a great catchphrase for him. So what I need from you is a signature move or a name for his wrestling persona.
His signature move was clearly the log splitter.
The log splitter. Okay.
Yeah.
As he screamed, 4 sore, and seven
It's 7
tears
tears
ago.
ago.
We
Yes.
would give you. I gave you the log splitter.
Right. And what the log splitter was, is as he got the guys down, he would grab them by the feet and lift them up, put them onto their shoulders upside down, hence pinning them. But he would split their legs. It's log split. And it said 4 sore and 7 tears ago. Yeah.
Whew.
Oh, boy. And they did not stretch back in those days. So that would have been
Much less
painful
plastic.
and awkward. Thank you.
I really hope
Chris.
his arm didn't come down between.
No.
Oh, yeah. You had to give him the hammer, the springboard hammer.
Okay,
Speaking of Charlie, hello, our third armchair historian. Charlie, where
Hi.
are you calling us from today? And do not say Orlando.
The city beautiful. There's
As
such
long as you didn't say
bringing
Orlando,
us
that's
such
fine.
bands as O-Town. I can't believe you forgot O-Town in the list of bands.
Oh boy, I did.
Easy
I
to
did
forget.
not forget O-Town. The world forgot O-Town. Charlie,
Oh,
we know the signature move. We know the catchphrase. So, what was Abraham Lincoln's wrestling persona name?
ironically, his wrestling name was Your American Cousin.
What was the first name?
Your American Cousin.
Okay, one name, your American cousin.
Yeah.
All right. They all can't be with us, folks, but we're not here.
He
For comedy,
died.
we're
He
here for
died
history.
watching the show Our American Cousin.
Oh.
Oh.
Deep cut.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. No, we'll give you the wah-wah again.
Okay.
Okay. All right. There it is.
There it is. And
We're gonna have to stick
well
with that.
deserved. Okay, thank you. It's great to meet you all here tonight. And you're all competing together. But the thing is, 2 of you are going to be telling us like an actual historical story. But one of you is going to be bluffing. Now, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to give you each a chance 3 times. So you each get 3 chances to tell your story, to start your story, to continue your story, and then to finish your story over the course of 3 rounds. And we will keep track of these rounds and how often you go using the Roundulator 5000, which is right here. There it is. The Roundulator 5000. There it is. It came up. It uncloaked. We decloaked the Roundulator 5000. You're going to go in order, and you're going to have a certain amount of time for each round, but it's going to get shorter as we go from round to round. And while you're watching at home, feel free to guess or comment or do whatever you want in whatever website or medium that you are watching us on here. But before we go, let's just go over the rules one more time. I think we covered most of them, but one more time. Adam, give us those rules again.
We've got rules. Here they come. It's the historian rule card. If for those
Boom.
listening on our audio podcast, Carlos will now read them.
Historians are inspired by the topic. Tonight's topic is fresh. They've all had a little bit of time to research it and slapdash together actual or fictional stories from it. True stories are mostly factual with a little bit of fiction garnish. Bluff story is mostly fictional with a little bit of factual garnish, and no audience help is allowed. Please don't spoil if you know what's fictional and what's factual. Those are the rules. Let's start the game. As we start it up, History Bluffs round 1. Adam.
Let's do it. Round number 1.
That sounded great, I assume. Okay, Melissa, we're going to
sure
start
did.
with you. Our topic is fresh. You have 75 seconds on the clock. You can begin when you hear the boom.
Okay, so before the name Jon Snow became known as King of the North from Game of Thrones, the name was synonymous with the development of modern public health policies and germ theory. It all started in the midst of the cholera outbreak in England in 1854, which cholera is a super nasty digestive disease that had already claimed the lives of many English and Welsh people at that time. In fact, in 1849 to 1848 to 49, about 50,000 people had died from cholera. So it was a really big deal in that time. And when cholera started to take hold in Soho, London, people started to take notice and try to figure out some more advanced theories about what was going on there. So background on Soho, though, at the time, it was an interesting area. They had this square. It was called the Golden Square. And in the middle of that square, they had a water pump. And it was called the Broad Street Water Pump. And it was known to have the freshest water through the entire neighborhood. People even said it tasted slightly carbonated. They made sherbets out of it. There were coffee shops that like advertised using the Broad Street pump. And to hear more about what happens next, you'll have to wait for round 2.
All right, thank you very much, Melissa. Now's the time of the show when we go to the other armchair historians to see if they are believing the historian that just spoke or if they are inclined to think of them as the bluff. We'll start with you, Chris. Was Melissa's story about Soho or was it a no-no?
No.
Well, Melissa's story, about talking about Jon Snow and germ theory, the cholera outbreak, color me skeptical.
Cholera, you skeptical? Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Charlie, we're starting to get a little hot around the cholera here.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, so far she says London and Wales exist. So I guess she's doing okay. There's not really much to fight back on right now. But so far it seems reasonable. I mean, I don't know why the Scottish didn't die of this too, but we'll see.
Scots. They eat haggis. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah.
They're tough. They're tough. All right. We will at least give Melissa that London and Wales do exist. It's very gracious of you, Charlie. Chris,
Yes.
it's your turn now. It's time for you to
All right.
begin telling us your tale from history. You will also have 75 seconds on the clock. You can begin when you hear the boom.
All right. So my story is about John Marbury, the founder of Fresh Market, the grocery chain. But he grew up in rural North Carolina. And his father was in the grocer business, a supplier. And he would drive with his father between North and South Carolina to different grocery stores and became, he wanted to follow his father's footsteps. He started working at a chain called the Jacobs Grocers chain, a small mid-Atlantic chain there in the Carolinas. And he became really good friends. A childhood buddy of his actually worked there as well, named Joseph Whitsitt. The two of them kind of moved up. They got noticed by Mr. Jacobs, and they were good workers. And he sent John Marbury, reluctantly, Marbury didn't want to go, to France to do some buying for some of the stuff that they import. And there, Marbury was meeting with a local French grocer, and he fell in love with the guy's daughter. Her name was Cecilia Dubois. That guy's name was Pierre Dubois. And he fell in love with Cecilia Dubois, and he convinced Mr. Dubois that he wanted to marry his daughter, started corresponding, and we'll find out what happens in round number 2.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris, for your compelling story about North Kakalaki and the Fresh Market founder. Charlie, is this a true story about a trip to France, or does Chris have ants in his pants?
Ooh, definitely ants in his pants. Like Mulberry, Mulford, what Mullery, Muller.
Mar.
He can't even keep the name straight. So clearly he's making it up.
Clearly making it up. Not a ringing endorsement for you, Chris. Melissa, this story, is it about North Carolina, aka North Kakalaki, or is this just a bunch of malarkey?
Ooh. So my thing that kind of stuck out to me, a little bit of a red flag, is you say he took trips with his father, these long road trips to go to grocery stores. I don't think I've ever been on long road trips with family and been like, yeah, I feel better about our relationship now and I want to follow in your footsteps.
This was in the early 1960s.
Still.
Simpler time, Melissa. Simpler time.
Maybe I'm just cynical. I don't know.
All right. Oh, glass half full. All right. Thank you very much, folks. We're going to now move on. Speaking of cynics, let's move on to Melissa. I'm sorry,
Charlie.
Melissa, you already win. Let's move on to Charlie. I guess I'm the cynic in this one. Moving on to Charlie now, you're going to have 75 seconds as well on the clock to begin telling us your tale. You can begin when you hear the baboon.
Okay. Nothing to me says fresh like a nice, cool, frozen treat in the middle of a hot, sweaty summer. But where did the idea of a watery flavored frozen pop on a stick come from? Well, let me tell you. In 1905, an 11-year-old boy was making some homemade powdered lemon soda outside on his porch. He got a glass, poured in some water, opened the container of powder. He poured the powder in and started to stir it with a wooden stick. Somehow he left it on the porch. He went inside and it stayed out there overnight. Now, the temperatures at that time were down and it froze. So the next day he came out, pulled the stick out of his cup, and there he was, a popsicle. He invented the popsicle. That little boy was William Frank Epperson, and that was the invention of the popsicle. 17 years later, he'll do something with it.
Oh,
This is so entertaining.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for your entertaining. Adam, he is enjoying it. Oh boy, that was a fun little story about a little boy who invented a popsicle. Or was it fun but true, Melissa?
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. Right away, right off the bat, you used a lot of adjectives to fill up some time. like watery, cold, like describing the temperature in great depth. I don't know.
Oh boy,
seems
you did what every college student trying to fill in a research paper does, Charlie. You just filled it with nonsense.
He double spaced his story.
Yeah, if you saw the type, it was like 48 point. Yeah.
All right. Chris, is this a magical true story about a wooden stick, or is Charlie just fibbing slick?
I think Charlie's nose is growing.
That's the wooden stick.
That's the wooden stick.
Yeah.
Charlie, I'm going to throw the accusation that Charlie leveled on me right back at him because he stumbled over a couple of words. And not only, as Melissa pointed out, he used a whole ton of adjectives in the beginning. And he was so adamant about like the hot summer, sweaty, blah, blah, blah. And then this thing froze overnight. So he's talking about winter. It's like, make up your mind. Is it summer or is it winter? You got to settle on one season.
Microclimates, I guess. I don't know.
Oh boy. Well, that note leaves us at the end of round one. We're about to enter round two, but before we do, Adam, I forgot to check in and ask you about Abraham Lincoln, wilderness wrestler, and I want to know. We know his signature move. We know his catchphrase. We know his. Well, we got a name. We know we're not married to it. We're not married to it, but who would be his tag team partner? Who would be? What would be the name of the tag team partner for Abraham Lincoln if he had one?
Oh, that would be his official wrestler name is the Judge, but he's also known as Honest T.
Ooh, I get it.
Yeah,
that's because I live now.
He wears gold chains. I'm just saying.
I see. Honesty.
Okay. You not Ulysses S. Grand Slam.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
You have salvaged yourself, Charlie. You've salvaged yourself. Okay. Speaking of salvage, let's salvage what we can from the last two rounds. And Adam, take us to the next round, which is
go to round number 2.
All right, we're in round 2 where the points are worth double, and we don't use points, so that's double of nothing or nothing. Okay.
Love it.
We're going to go with you first, Chris. This time you will have 60 seconds on the clock to continue your tale of John Marbury, the Fresh Market founder, so we can suss out if you are telling the truth or if you are bluffing your heart out. 60 seconds on the clock. You can begin when you hear the boom.
All right. So Marbury had been reluctant to go to France, but he went over there and he fell in love at first sight with Cecilia. And he started traveling and he said, sure, I'll do the buying. And eventually convinced her dad to let her come back with him because him and his best friend, Joseph Whitsitt, who were childhood buddies, remember, they were like sons to Mr. Jacobs. He did not have any children of his own. So he moved them up quickly into the management positions. And Marbury became the buyer. So Cecilia moved over, they got married, and then they outgrew their local grocery chain. And Cecilia was a huge Gardner fan, and she liked fresh meals and local. She liked supporting local farmers as her dad did. So the three of them joined forces, created what we now know as Fresh Market. And it became this bigger chain. I'll tell you what happens in round number 3 to all of this.
All right, everyone. Chris continued to tell us a story, and he added for Mr. Marbury, the love of his wife, Cecilia, or is this person not really? We'll start with you, Charlie. What do you think?
I think this is like the boringest telenovela I've ever heard. like he's telling this like relationship story, and it's just like he went to France, he fell in love, there were no problems, there was nothing about a green card, like he just came over and she came too, and then she somehow started planting plants even though she had spent her entire time in a completely different ecological and temperate zone. You know, I mean, it's you need some spice, man. You need some spice.
They sold spices.
Chris, it's not enough drama for Charlie's mama. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I also find the whole thing a very like quaint and very like charming to a point where it's almost like too sweet. I'm waiting for the turn. I'm like, what's going to happen with the father-in-law? What's his take on this? And there's like brother and there's Cecilia. And I'm wondering if lilacs are going to enter into the story, and which are ominous for lilacs.
All right, Melissa is waiting for the story to pull an M. Night Shyamalan. We'll see if it does. Meanwhile, we're going to go with Charlie for round 2 now. Charlie, you will also have 60 seconds put on your clock to continue your story of the watery flavored frozen pop on a stick. When you hear the boom, begin.
17 laters. Eberson was a realtor in Oakland. Yeah. And he needed something to impress people. So he thought back to his old discovery. And then during a fireman's ball, he brought out a selection of watery frozen pops that he did. Everybody loved them, and so many people wanted more. The next year, Frank received the patent for the ice pop and that he once called the Epsicle. All right. And then by 1924, he owned the patents for all handled frozen confection or ice lollipops. So that year, he debuted his pops at Neptune Beach Amusement Park in 7 different flavors. This was the beginning of the Popsicle brand. Yeah.
People that didn't watch last week's episode won't know this, but it's so frustrating how short you are on the clock. I hate it when people go over, but I think I hate it more when people consistently go short. I feel like that's my new thing.
Got to vamp, Charlie. Got to vamp.
We need a sound when someone does that, Adam. Pick a sound. A penalty sound.
All right.
Get a hockey penalty sound or something. Okay. All right.
Melissa,
my frustration with Charlie's lack of time management aside, also he fails to be on time. He skips time words like years. Just said 17 laters. 17 laters. That's like apocalyptic people talking in the future. It happened 17 laters.
Yeah.
Melissa, was this a true story about a fireman's ball, or is Charlie fibbing, y'all? What's going on?
Yeah, I think where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like there's a lot of stretched out time. There's a lot of just details, and then weirdly sparse amount of details about time catching. But then the detail of like 7 flavors, like what were those flavors and why 7? I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. So I think just the overall telling, I have questions. I have doubts.
Questions and doubts. Chris, do you have questions and doubts? Is this a true story of frozen confections, or should we be looking at truth rejection here?
Okay. So Charlie said my story was quaint. Charlie, pot, kettle pot. I'd like to introduce you. Holy crap. 17 years later, skipping 17 years later with no problem. And then he just suddenly remembered that he's had this frozen thing in his freezer for 17 years. He pulls it out and he brings it to a fire department guy, and they all love it. And then he wants us to believe that he had the. I thought I heard he had the patent on all ice pops or a pop, And so wow, okay, yes, I thank you, Charlie, for that entertainment.
All right, Charlie. Not only are you failing to manage your time properly, but if there was a popsicle in a fridge for 17 years, that's not fresh. And that brings us to our favorite part of the game show. How is your story related to the topic? Because Melissa, fresh water, check. Chris, Fresh Market founder, check. Charlie, 17 laters popsicle. Not checked. Not yet.
Remember all those adjectives I used at the very beginning of the show?
Don't remember them.
They were a big thing. Everybody talked about them.
They're fresh, as in they're the new thing. Okay. There it is. Oh my Lord!
The topic word.
I need more of this.
Okay. I need less of it. So let's move on to Melissa. Melissa, 60 seconds you will have to tell
5
us the
laters
story
later
about the fresh water that you're clearly established. You have 60 seconds on the clock. Begin when you hear the boom.
All right, let's do it.
All right, my story is not quaint because people are dying of cholera. It's not funny. But there are 2 researchers that are important here. So you have one person whose name was John Snow. He was a surgeon, and he was all about patterns. So he started out his investigations by going door to door and asking people what they ate, what they drank. He made these giant maps of everything. And there was another guy who was doing the same thing at the same time, but for a different purpose. He was a reverend at the local church, and all of his parishioners were falling sick of cholera. And so naturally, he started to place together the pieces as well. However, John Snow and the Reverend Henry Whitehead had 2 competing theories with each other. And they actually went head to head in the papers and in front of the Board of Health. So John Snow came up with this science and said, hey, it's probably the water. Let's remove the handle. Everyone was like, no. And you'll have to hear what happens next in part 3.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much, Chris. Melissa has continued her story. She's introduced now Reverend John Snow. Is there a Reverend John Snow, or is she trying to pull a snow job on us?
No.
She's trying to pull a snow job on us because, first of all, I got confused at the end when remove the handle from the water. I don't get that.
So it's like a water
the pump.
Yeah,
The pump.
the
Okay.
handle from the pump. Yeah.
All right, but all right. So that's explained, but you cannot come up with an explanation that makes sense for me to have door-to-door germ theory researchers. I'm sorry. That flag up on that one.
I mean, reverends and dentists and barbers did a lot of stuff back in the day.
Oh my.
So maybe reverends and dentists and barbers. Oh my. Very nice. Bonus points for Chris if we had them. We don't. Charlie, Melissa mentioned a lot of people dying of cholera. If there's dying, is she lying?
Yes. Well, like you previously said, you went to her and you were confused about how my fresh entered the situation, but I have a feeling we're going to find out that maybe that water ain't so fresh, and so therefore, how does that relate to the topic?
It's a fresh water source. Unless it's salt water, it's fresh.
No, but
That's how
I
it
feel like we're
relates.
about to find out it's not. Somehow.
I think we would know by now if it was salty water. But you might be right. Maybe this town didn't realize they were drinking salty water that was giving them cholera poisoning. Maybe, but probably not.
The way you know the English.
Yeah. Boy, Lateef. Okay, everyone, we're going to go through real quick before we get to round 3, because now we're about to end round 3. But before we do, I just want one word real fast. I want to measure the temperature of the room, starting with Melissa. Who do you think is the bluff?
Ooh, I think it's Charlie.
All right, Chris, who do you think is the bluff?
I think it's both of them.
Oh, no, stop.
Wait, you can't
Say,
do that.
I'm not sure yet. Then that.
I'm not
Say,
sure
I'm
yet.
not sure yet. Okay. I'm not going to, no. And then,
That's not how any
Charlie,
of this
who do you think is the bluff, or you're not sure? Not
I
both.
I think it's Chris. Although I have no idea I don't even remember what Chris's story is.
Okay,
but-
so I think Melissa said Charlie. Charlie said Chris. Chris
Yeah.
gave a non-garbage answer,
It's true.
which will take us poorly into...
Round number 3.
Hooray! We're in round number 3. We're
Oh,
down
God.
to the wire here, guys. I can only give you 45 seconds to finish your stories. You must finish your stories in 45 seconds. You, Charlie, you get an extra 5 if you need it. Do not stop at the 45-second mark.
I'm ready.
If you need an extra 5, you can take it, all right? You have permission. The rest of you got 45. Speaking of Charlie, we're going to start with you, okay? Finish up your story about the frozen confections and the 17 laters. When you hear the boom, go.
Okay. So Frank ended up sort of being very down on his luck, and he's ended up selling his company, and he kind of leaves the story at this point. Later in 1925, Good Humor sues them, the popsicle company, because they're like, hey, we have something on a stick and it's like icy and it's cold, and they end up suing each other for a while, and then they end up settling out of court with Good Humor taking the national the national product of ice cream on a stick, but the popsicle company ends up getting frozen water or frozen suckers or sorbet on a stick, and that's how they divide the nation.
All right. Big frozen confection got involved and they split it up. Okay, Melissa, is Charlie's story about something icy and cold, or is it about something bluffing so bold?
Ooh, I'm wondering with Frozen Sucker if he's trying to play us for suckers as well. You know, it's like popsicles. When the longer you hold it, there's like more that drips off of your hands, and I feel like the longer he's talking, the more holes start to appear with the lack of detail.
There it is. Ba-boom.
Yeah, ba-boom indeed. And Chris, what are your thoughts right now on Charlie's story? I know you weren't sure, or you were sure it's both. It's not both. What do you think about Charlie's story now?
Yeah, so he went on and on about all these years later for Frank Epperson, I believe his name was, and then he got down on his luck and boom, he's out of the story. That's an ill-humored way to end his thing. His
See what he
part.
did there? Let's get that drum roll.
I see there. I got it there. Done.
Rim shot.
There it
Boom.
is.
Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, Melissa, we're going to go to you now. You will now have 45 seconds to wrap up your tale of Reverend Jon Snow and the cholera handles. We'll see if you can get this in under the wire. You have 45 seconds. Begin when you hear the boom.
All right, so there's two people, just to be clear. There's Jon Snow, the surgeon, and there's Reverend Whitehead. They're both doing the same thing, the door-to-door investigation of the sickness. And eventually they come to the conclusion and they present it to the Board of Health and say, it's probably the water pump. They say, the Board of Health says, nah, but we'll try it anyways. So they removed the handle from the water pump, and sure enough, the rates of cholera went way, way, way down. And it turns out that they had built the water pump 3 feet from an old cesspit. And so it was starting with patient 0 was a baby, diaper got into the water supply, and that's how the cholera outbreak started. But it took longer for Jon Snow to get recognition. Boom.
All right. And he didn't get recognition until J.R.R. Martin gave it to him in his story series. So, Chris,
Yes.
is Melissa's story down with the sickness, or is she fibbing with a quickness?
Well, she was on a good path, but that the handles on the pump, the water pumps, were just a few feet from the cesspit. I think she is swimming in the low end of the believability pool.
Oh, nice. Charlie, what do you think? Cesspit or bluffing fit?
Well, let the bodies hit the floor. You guys were all about the like saltwater, freshwater, but I'm gonna say water with diapers in it and cholera, I would not call fresh. I mean, you can drink whatever you want to drink, but like, yeah.
Not so fresh.
Don't cholera
Not
water
fresh.
shame me, Charlie. I
No.
won't take it here.
Oh, no.
All right, thank you very much. And now that leaves Chris. Chris, you are final historian for the final round here. You have 45 seconds to complete your story. No pressure, but you can convince everyone watching at home right now if you land this properly, or you can put yourself under the radar if you don't. No pressure, though. 45 seconds. You can begin when you hear the boom.
So I was criticized for my story being too nice and too little thing. Here's the twist for you. Cecilia dies in childbirth. There, are you happy now? She's dead. John Marbury was devastated, and he basically kind of said, look, guys, I'll do the buying, but I'm not going to stay active in the company. But he was still technically one of the co-owners. The company, so he continued to do buying. The company was sold, went public. They made literally hundreds of millions of dollars. He still owned a ton of stock. He retired and he lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and he tended to local markets. He ran a local a food market, what do you call it, with a farmer's market in honor of Cecilia. And he's a multi-millionaire.
All right. Marbury, happily ever after, except for the dead wife thing. Thanks, Charlie, for insisting on that. Okay, speaking of Charlie, like Chris says, did Marbury own stock, or is this just all a big crock?
I mean, it's interesting, but like, it I don't know. It just doesn't seem interesting enough to like justify like being on this show. Like some guy made a lot of money by selling stocks. That's not interesting. Everybody does that all the time. I mean, like, and then also there's this weird like white thing going on between Snow and Whitehead. Like why are they so
That's
like
not my story.
congruent? Oh, that was.
And my guy also didn't shoot Abraham Lincoln, just so you know.
Yeah, Charlie, you're getting
in the classic words of Chris, I think they both are right.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say, Charlie. They're getting dangerously close to they both are right, which is not an acceptable answer. Melissa, Melissa, Chris spiced up his story for you. What do you say now? Someone died so that you could be entertained.
But I also have questions about what you consider like the happy-go-lucky times of like a very long road trip mentioned in the beginning with family members, and then at the end running a farmer's market. I don't think farmers markets like running one. That sounds so stressful, having to deal with all of the vendors and like making money off of that. I don't know.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, folks, we are at the end of round 3, which means it is almost time to figure out who are the armchair historians and who is the history bluff. But before we do, let's go through the cast one more time to see what they think. You right now, guys, you can make your case against someone else, and you can also make your case for yourself, why one other person is the bluff and why you cannot be the bluff. We will start with you, Charlie.
Once again, I don't even remember Chris's story clearly, so I'm gonna go with Melissa. Because
high stakes here.
That was at least interesting. You know what I mean? Like, because, you know, if you're going to make something up, you're not going to make it up boring like Chris. So I'm going to go with Melissa.
He's got high expectations of history. Boy,
I don't know. Maybe hidden in plain sight kind of scenario if you bore it up enough.
It's a classic tactic, I hear.
Charlie thinks it's Melissa. Chris, who do you think the bluff is?
Well, I think that Charlie's the crux of Charlie's story melted away before our eyes, but Melissa using Jon Snow, the huge HBO hit series, the main character from that, And just last night in Soho happens to be a movie that's on right now running. And I saw it, and it's on HBO. So I'm going to caller her out, and I'm going to say that Melissa is the bluff.
Nice.
All right. He's finally Chris threw out the Kaiser Soze scenario. I'm surprised you waited this long in the episode to suggest it. Melissa, okay, so Charlie thinks Melissa's a bluff. Chris thinks Melissa's a bluff. You have two people thinking that you're the bluff, Melissa. Who do you think the bluff is?
Well, I pointed out some holes in Charlie's story, but I also feel like the midway kind of point of Chris pointing to both of us as the bluffs, that kind of raised a red flag for me just a little bit. So I'm going to have to say that the story about the grocery, you're trying to sell us something that's not edible. Not
okay. All right. So Melissa thinks Chris is the bluff. So to recap, Charlie thinks Melissa's a bluff. Chris thinks Melissa's a bluff. Melissa thinks Chris is the bluff. So here's who can win. Charlie, if you are in fact the bluff, no one chose you. So I would make you the winner if you're the bluff. Otherwise, it's whoever gets it right. And you were tied. But I think, Charlie, you being the bluff is the only way that one person can take this whole thing.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. But then Melissa said Chris is the bluff. Whatever. All right. We'll figure it out. You know what, Adam? I think it's that time.
It is that time. I'm going to have you step off our virtual stage, Carlos, because I am going to line up these perpetrators and find out, was your bluff this episode about Fresh? Was it Melissa? Was your bluff Chris? Or was your bluff Charlie? I shall reveal the bluff for this entire show. It's been Chris. That's right, Chris was the bluff with his Fresh Market story. Well done.
And if Chris was the bluff, Melissa's the only one that guessed Chris. So, Melissa, you actually did win the game.
Hey, Melissa, with 2 votes against her. See, that's how magic happens.
And
I love it.
Charlie, you get nothing. You did not win.
I'm sorry, I didn't
nothing.
pick the boring story.
Nothing. Good chaser.
Oh, you got to burn in, though. You got to burn in. Okay. Okay, so you know what, Charlie, what was it about Melissa's story that made you think it was her? Where do you think you went wrong today?
Like I said, I honestly don't even remember what Chris's story was every round. I was talking about Snow and Whitehead, and that was Melissa. So like clearly, that was the one that was more
Charlie's game show music.
All right.
There you go, Charlie. Hey, Charlie's thinking hard about the stories. Okay.
You know, there are boring stories in history too. Just history is like anything that happened in the past.
Melissa, why would you pick one?
Melissa, what was it about Charlie's story that led you to believe that he was telling the truth?
It feels like the lawsuits at the end, to be honest with you, the lawsuits rang true. I'm like, yeah, that seems about right. It seems like how that would go.
It got legal. All right. Well, thank you all three of you for participating as armchair historians and or the bluffs. And thank you all at home for watching us today. Congratulations if you also guessed the correct bluff. We'll make sure to put a like and a heart on that if you did. And you know what? We want to make sure that you all tune in next time when the topic is brand new and another bluff tries to fool us all. Adam, take us home.
You got it, Carlos. Don't forget to tune in. You can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Listen to us where you get your podcasts. We'll see you again.